As a manager of a content creator, I was allowed to visit the Cutout Museum and interview Tobyn Jacobs with a full tour seeing everything he had created, even witnessing the process of a cutout's creation. After traveling to his house, we were greeted by a squad of Marines sitting by the window as a preview of what's to come. We got out of the car, had a small chat, then got back in the car and was generously treated to lunch. We finished lunch and arrived back at the museum. Before going in, he talked about how he wants to make a cutout 80 to 100 feet tall, and it would most likely have to be built in the front yard. The instant he opened the door, we were blown away by the first glance of around 50 cutouts. As the door continued to open, we saw the full power that the army of colors showcased in front of us. And as we walked in, an ambush on all sides with an entire platoon, plus 2 titans on the right, 3 titans on the left, and 1,000 eyes along the walls. As Tobyn put it, the Neander's cutout was apparently small compared to the larger ones, even though she is sitting at 20 feet tall. It was overwhelming, and I tried to keep my excitement from getting the best of me. As we go through all the footage, try to put in an effort to find your Oshi. How well can you identify them in the sea of characters you know? What's the fastest you can spot someone not in the first 3 rows, and not the tallest one standing above the crowd? Because, much like me, you're going to get distracted along the way as you see people you recognize. I've been around conventions, I've seen a lot of cutouts, even had my photos taken with them, tossing in a joke at the same time. The most I saw in one place was at Offkai Gen 3, when every cutout they had was sitting along the atrium, and it was a great display. However, when the scale increases and it's not one group of standees at a booth, or 5 groups scattered around a wing of a convention, it's hard to contain your feelings as your brain tries to process what it's seeing, much like a dog with 100 tennis balls. You will see why I called it the Cutout Museum, because if you can see right here, Markiplier is on the wall. While the VTuber community loves Tobyn and a lot of his most recent focus has been on VTubers, he has been working on these for years and has made many creators from YouTube or Twitch and characters from video games. After the initial shock of entering an entirely new world, the tour had started. Nearly every room in the front section of the house had some kind of paper in it. The bathroom had them in the hand-washing area. Even the toilet had one on it. Laplace was here because she's the only one who could fit. Continuing down the hall, the walls were lined with cutouts and posters before hitting the end of the hallway where we met a few more VTubers that I could best describe as opposite ends of the decibel scale, before we walked into the Vine Sauce room. This room wasn't used by anyone except guests, and they removed Michael when they visit. Heading back down the hallway, I took some B-roll footage before getting heavily distracted and letting the excitement finally get the best of me.
Where's my... What did he find?
Sorry. I love this. Yeah.
I was freaking out the more I saw. Thankfully, Tobyn enjoys seeing others' reactions.
It's so funny because like all this stuff, man, it's just like me seeing like a blender or a toaster. Like it's so normal to me that like...
For you, this is like something that you've like seen a lot of.
Yeah, it's always fun to see people's reactions, so...
His average build time is roughly 10 minutes. What slows him down most are sections where there are a lot of holes, and those can take around 30 minutes to an hour. Narissa, as an example, due to her feathers, took an hour to complete the cut. Continuing to the right wing of the house, we went through a hallway of stadium-sized posters. They were such a marvel to see that I never noticed the gap leading into the kitchen, hiding behind Nanashi Mume and Mori Calliope. Passing by another squad of Marines, we are greeted by a Peko platoon, organized on a stage. I saw them on Twitter before arriving and was excited to see them. The ambush of clones distracted us entirely as we passed by Asmon as he was laying down on the counters. Right next to the Pekora army was Neko Tatsuna, Mozumi Pichi, Nurosama, and Araka Luto. Tsuna was one of the few I wanted to see in person. Her Opkai cutout was also fantastic. In the middle of this living room, we took a moment to ask him how his parents felt about his hobby, if they were aware of it. Thankfully, they were supportive and understand how hard it can be and how much effort he puts into it. Every possible piece of blank space on the wall has a VTuber on it if he could fit it, including over the fireplace and in front of bookshelves. Past the fireplace before crossing over into the printing room, an army of small bays. The arch for the printing room had a few Kali and Numi cutouts hanging above it, with legs hanging over the entrance. From outside at night, it doesn't look the most appealing to visitors. In the printing room was 8 small photo printers, each $700 to $1,000, and one large SureColor Epson S6600L for doing singular prints, costing $28,000. The cutouts in the room consisted of Chaika Nanami, Yuri, and Hutao hanging on the walls, with a mint fully printed from the SureColor Epson, waiting to be taken and cut. The large printer has allowed him to print out the army of 100 Marines that are all around the house, with the majority of them concentrated in the printing room. The same Marines we saw outside at the beginning are in this room. The small printer makes the large-sized cutouts like Nyanners, Ko-Maria, Narissa Ravencroft, and Hosho Marine. On the table was a cutout of Evanito. Tobyn wanted to give us a live demonstration of how quickly he can cut one out. He had a nifty chair for this, which helps him move around and cut efficiently. As someone who has used an X-Acto knife before, the tool is designed for precision, and most of the time it is to be used lightly, carefully, and slowly. His consistent pace and speed shows how much he has mastered his techniques, because going too fast means you could overcut, undercut, or can cause a crumple in the paper. The angle of the knife matters too. Turn too hard or angle the knife incorrectly and you'll pull the paper, tearing it. Once you cut something, you cannot go back. You can only cut more. For something of this size to be cut in 86 seconds with almost no mistakes was a marvel to see in person. The 100 Marines were made the same way. After seeing the cutout, we were gifted with the first tender of the VTuber Republic. It's actually incredible, and I have to give this back to Evan. Hey Evan, can I keep the currency from the VTuber Republic?
You can keep it.
Let's go! I guess I don't have to. He did take an entire cutout of himself back home. Past the cutout section is an open storage room for his ink. He accidentally ordered an excess 6 months before our visit and is struggling to go through it all. Tobyn would spend roughly $2,000 a month on ink in the past. In this crate, a single bottle contains 2 years of ink for the average consumer, and he's used 500 of them in the last 6 months. He has used 1,000 years of ink and has about 9,000 years more on standby. He has taken proper measures to recycle. However, he recycles them in a different way, fitting of an artist and craftsman making swords. A few feet down is a 3D printout of Gura, a Mizuno shield, and Tobyn himself. Right under the fauna poster is an automatic cutter that doesn't work as great with larger prints. It can cut out the small bales we saw in under a minute. However, formatting the system to prepare larger cuts for automation takes too long, and the time he spends cutting them by hand is much more efficient. On the opposite wall from the automated cutter is his first ever Mizuno cutout. It is about 5 or 6 years old by this point. It's a surprise to see this still in his possession, since there comes a time when most people move on from their first project, putting it down, then later picking it up again. It's a true showcase of his dedication to his passion and craft. The end of the first hallway for the right wing has another handful of cutouts, and an arch of Nanashi Mume's. On the right side was Tobyn's room. However, it is now his office space. The room is filled with Chizuru from Rent a Girlfriend. While I may find the relationship with the main character through rescue romance problematic, I believe she is an incredible character. If this was the only room we saw, I'd say the time and dedication for this was still impressive. To the left of the right-wing hallway, straight out of the office, is a secret passage behind Regis Altair. This small hallway is a gallery of his past projects. There's more here than I've seen or known about. A ton of cutouts that I never knew existed. I'd like to state again, I called this the Cutout Museum because for Tobyn, it's never been strictly about VTubers. It's about physical creators like CDawgVA, Markiplier, Michael, Moist Critical, Ludwig, Joey the Anime Man, Garnt Giguk, MatPat, Hidetaka Miyazaki, Some Ordinary Gamer, Asmongold, Tyler1, Chris Broad, Hungrybox, and Dream. Game characters, a 3D Zhongling, Ganyu, and Barbara, who I wish I could have taken home. Natsuki, Yuri, Sayori, Monica, the Minecraft Villager, Mizuno times 300, Link, Frisk, and Deathclaw. Anime characters like Your Forger, Rem, Chizuru, Misato Katsuragi, Uzumaki, Haruhi, and Speedwagon. Then there's the other miscellaneous stuff like the 70-foot tall cutout of Sam, the Samsung girl, Bradley the dog, horrors beyond my comprehension, a sock puppet, Jimmy Neutron, and a giant sword. It's not simply about VTubers. It's never been just about VTubers. It's about building an army and sharing it with the world in a more wholesome way. In this hallway is also a signature from Kodaka, the creator of Danganronpa. Kodaka and Tobyn met at Anime Expo, and to Tobyn's surprise, Kodaka knew who he was. Tobyn described Kodaka as well-mannered, as Tobyn had assumed Kodaka would find him and his content a bit insane. One section of the house was compromised due to a water heater explosion. The room that held the water heater was lined top to bottom with HoloLive posters. However, due to renovations and water damage, they had to be removed. The final room we hit was the behind-the-scenes section, showcasing a few accidents, works in progress, and storage. This large mint had an unfortunate end, accidentally acting as a wind blocker while riding a scooter. The rest of the house tour led to the theater room, then outside where he had a small accident in the past. While streaming, his large printer needed an ink change. He had to work fast since he was live, so he took them out, placed them in plastic cups, and set them on the ground. The ink gets extremely hot, which ended up melting the cups and seeping into the ground. He hired a pressure washer to remove it, however, no progress could be made. After passing the pool, we headed to the tennis court, where he makes some of his taller cutouts that extend beyond 40 feet. The last one he made was a 60-foot Kiara. As the main house tour was coming to an end, he explained how his ultimate goal is to have every single room plastered and filled with cutouts. Tobyn explained how there's roughly 700 cutouts, and not every single one is set up. He hasn't thrown away most of them, including the Your cutouts that fell like dominoes. 90% of the cutouts he has made have stood up. The 30-foot Aqua that was printed on the large printer, however, the tape does not like to stick to, so she didn't last long. For a 20-foot tall character, he can make in about 8 hours. I asked him what leads to the decision of a larger cutout or print, since I saw Ko Maria twice in a scaled format. It boils down to who he knows of or VTubers he's seen. There's no preference to who gets real estate, and if there was one exception, I would give it to Nanashi Mume. Since we were back at the entrance, I asked him about the location of a few VTubers. Tobyn explained that many times you won't be able to see someone at eye level because someone as small as Jelly or Connie gets buried. A closer look will reveal Limalicious, Reichi, Kokoromo Memory, and Amami Ami. I couldn't remember if I saw my Oshi, Toa, so I asked about it. His manager knew exactly where she was, pointed her out to me. That really made my day. Although I may have seen her when I first walked in but forgot after. Tobyn hasn't met or talked to most of the VTubers he's made. He has met a few and collaborated with them, met many of them at Offkai, but nothing close to the number he has at his house. Tobyn describes his collection as the ultimate crossover, much like Super Smash Bros., which is appropriate since it's all under the same IP for the most part. Finally, it was time to see his old room at his previous house, where he filmed the Mizuno video. After arriving at the house, all I felt was fear. I grew up enjoying art. I grew up loving art. My father is an artist, and I've treated all physical types of art with care, respect, and love. And I'm about to throw it all out the window as I step on paper printouts of Danganronpa characters. Walking along the floor made me feel as though I was walking across thin ice, and I was breaking it with every step. To get the full experience, I climbed the stairs. Mizuno wasn't simply a piece of art or an image. She wasn't just a wallpaper. You really put the wall in wallpaper. She was his world. Mizuno was his break into content creation and the start of his entire career and what will be his future. Even if that future changes from the current form of content. His walls, his floor, his ceiling, even the bathroom was filled with Mizuno. While he was obsessed at the time, after doing all this, he no longer sees her the same way. A small sacrifice for what will be the future. The room he sleeps over at isn't as decorated. However, he makes up for it in the bathroom as he places her against the walls and the counters all the way to the shower, which he showers in. We had our final meeting in the original Mizuno room. This room took a whole month to make, to set up, and to build for one video. This is dedication. This is passion. This is a journey to content creation. And I was lucky enough to have this opportunity to meet him, to say hello, and see all his work. I came later than Nick Robinson, and you could see the large contrast in the number of cutouts he's made and set up since. The first video I ever saw was an army of Watsons with his entire room decorated with all of Myth. I didn't know it at the time. It was a re-upload, but that was the first. The second video I saw was the Mizuno post, and that was when I realized he had passion, and I wanted to meet him and talk about it. After being there and seeing it in person, it is even more incredible than you'd ever expect. I hope one day I can help him for his generosity and time, because I would love to be a part of his next project. If you liked anything you saw, please visit his channel and check out his content. If you want to see a demonstration of how quickly he can make one, watch his live streams. Check the links below. Lastly, if you run a convention or a booth at a convention, I would suggest hiring him for a few hours to make these cutouts. It's a spectacle that would attract a crowd. Have him host a panel. Let him be a guest roaming around. People will show up to see him and he would love to be there. Reach out to him through his business email if you get a chance. You won't regret it one bit. Thanks all for joining on this side of the universe, and I will catch you in the next world.